I don't know anybody that's super successful doesn't live by the schedule to a T.
Hey, this is Blake Sloan. I've been selling real estate over 14 years. Our team of highly trained professionals, along with our unmatched marketing, has sold thousands of homes here in the Myrtle Beach area, and this is how we do it.
And there's a massive difference between being what? Very busy and very productive. Right? Action's not all created equal. We talked that a few weeks ago, so I want to talk about this triangle here just for my schedule piece. Right? My overall matrix in this. Because why? Why does the schedule matter? It's every minute, it's every second. The more I can become a person who watches hours than who watches minutes, who watches hours and watches minutes, becomes much, much more successful. Meaning that a beginning people kind of just lose hours here and there, right? Successful people barely lose minutes. Why? Because you got to become obsessed to that piece of it. So the first part, right, is I must make sure my schedule is very specific, very planned, right? Or they're waiting until after the 9:15 huddle gets finished before they can actually start planning, right? So I want you guys to understand that you must have it very, very, very specific. Very specific. Which is not hard to do, right? That's like I have my to-do list, which is what a lot of people can get to do to-do list, but then what happens to that list? Goes away. Or I get one or two things done, and then what happens?
Feel like you've accomplished enough.
I get caught in something else, have a problem, my phone rings, have an issue, right? Then all of a sudden what happens? My to-do list is gone. I go right back into reactive mode. I've done this hundreds of times. And so my weapon against that, super important, as I must have it timed. This is the connection here. It must be timed. Meaning what? They do a to-do list, they don't ever actually assign it a time. You must assign it a time. That's what people refer to as time blocks. Now, a lot of times people do what? They just go by one time block they do. Here's what happens. We tell them 17 times to do a calendar. They don't do the calendar. Level 2 of this, we help you build out a calendar. Alex tells you to build out a calendar. You have it planned out, and what do? Don't even look at it, right? And so the difference here is having it level 3, which is I can be here, I can look at my schedule, and I do what? I adjust it if needed based on my overall generalized block. I can block out 80% of mine here in what we do. And every day before the huddle, what I want to do? Look at it. I go right to where? My calendar on my phone, or I go to the calendar on my desktop. That's where I like to do it the most. I can see my whole week and my whole day, and I can look and see what needs to be moved around or not. And I have to make sure that my proactive time, the stuff I need the most, which makes me the most money, is what? It's assigned what? A time. Both beginning and end. Why? Yes, the deadline piece is important. So if I make X amount of calls, I want to know how many calls am I making per hour. A lot of times, well, I'm going to do $300 or $200, whatever to do, $100. And then what happens? And they do some stuff here, and it's not really productive. They're leaving a lot of time on the table to help them have more productivity. Super simple, but guess what? It's like looking in the sun. It's terrible, right? It's not easy. But if I want to be successful, I have to understand what's my trigger point here. You understand I need to make sure I plan my time piece every single day, right? Make $100 between X and Y. Make my follow-up dollars between X and Y. It's got to be timed. Third piece of this, which is very important, it's kind of connected to that. It must be written. Why? I like that Kyle said. If it's not written, it's not real. It's got to be written out. So here's what I'm doing this time, this part, and I got to be able to do what? Look at it. If I can't look at it, it's not real. I'm not going to follow it. How do I know? Because there's a piece of me that's undisciplined. I have a monkey brain right inside me that wants to jump around, all of which doesn't get me paid. And so I look at my calendar, open my calendar up, guess what I have? Written out, timed out, stuck to. Now, does that take a little work? Absolutely. Now, if I roll in at 9 in the huddle, then I try to plan my day out, I'm already wasting time. I'm already behind the 8 ball. Right? Winter's already been getting wins since 8 o'clock. And so make sure I do what? Plan the night before usually. And or the beginning of the week. In Warrior, we plan ourselves on Sundays, execute and change throughout the week. Super important. Now, what happens is, I do this for a while, all of a sudden my time compounds, My results compound. That's how you have somebody who sells double or triple the amount in 3 months, 4 months. Because they use the value of the compounding time here and the compound effect to help get them what they want. Does that make sense? Where do most people fail at? This piece right here. So what does that show?
Shows that I got to get disciplined.
You got an undisciplined mind, right?
Yeah.
It's okay. And that's not a bad thing. There's no judgment in that piece, but you just got to, one, understand what? My behavior piece here. Because, and here's the thing I left out earlier. As I understand my behaviors and my habits, I have to understand I need to make sure I always, part of a habit is really created by emotion. I didn't get deep in that, but emotion really drives habits, meaning that if I have a positive connotation on that habit, what happens? I'm more likely to do it. If I have a negative connotation on that habit, what happens? It goes away. You're not going to have it done. And so I need to understand my behavior. Part of my behavior piece comes with emotion. And I got to get disciplined understanding what are my words and my stories about what I'm doing here. Right? And change my story to, hey, I'm getting a lot better. I'm role playing, getting better. And I got to make sure this is my opportunity to win money, make some money for my family so I can get that new car. Yeah, there you go. And this is something I didn't hit earlier I need to, is if I'm motivation slacking, what I need to do? I got to find a bigger why. So now that I understand behavior, if I don't feel motivated, what I need to do? I check the boxes off my mind, go back to my behavior here, understand, hey, look, where do I have a bigger why? If you don't have one, come to me or Alex, we can help you figure out one. Like I mentioned, Kyle said, hey, I'm buy a house by what, like September or something, right? Yeah, so September, I know the why, right? So the difference is, hey, that's going to drive me. Very important. If you have kids, that's very easy to do. If you don't have kids, start doing it ahead of time for your kids. I did that for years. I didn't want my life to be like my kids' life to be like mine was. My parents argued about money my whole life. So that's a big why for me overall in terms of what that is, right? It's always been a why. That's super important for me. You guys with me on this? So I skip here back to the point of why I do that. I got to build a discipline to do what? Understand this is the hardest part for anybody. They do a half-ass calendar. They don't stick to it. And so the second part here is what Keith mentioned is the second piece here is protect. What does that mean? Protect. What does that mean, Keith, what you just said a minute ago?
You got to be able to actually abide by it.
Mm-hmm. Big time. And that's a good point. The level in which you stick to this shows the level in which you value the calendar. Right? And that's why you find people who are very good at time and somebody no-shows them or late, guess what? Makes you angry. Why? Because you value your time, they don't value time. Very important. Yeah, once you just, all of a sudden first you don't have that many deals going on, you get a lot of deals. So Jeremy, as you've gone to do 168 houses, what'd you have to do about time? Yeah, and understand that. Look, if I'm not good at this, learning some stuff, I'm trying to find out and figure out how my coaches put it to me years ago. It's hard for me to articulate that to you guys sometimes, but you got to get fanatical about this. If you want to have any level of success where you can actually make a lot of money, you got to be fanatical. Why? It's the only asset we all have that's the same. Because it takes me X amount to get focused on something. Now I'm unfocused. Now I got to help respond to that. Now I got to try to get refocused again. That's how you miss minutes right there. And all of a sudden my focus is not the same. But your in-laws in town, well, you block out personal stuff 3 days ahead of time. Yep. And same thing, right? So all time is not created equal. Meaning that there's focused time, right? Unfocused time. You guys with me on this? So that's super important. Lots of people focus and put the quantity as much as quality, but it's not the same. That's super important. So the first piece is, it must be prioritized. Prioritize. What does that mean? Most people just become a wandering generality. A wandering generality. What does that mean? Anybody heard that before? What's a wandering generality mean? Means they are just wandering, letting life happen. My morning's based on what emails I got. Right? There's nothing that's prioritized in terms of highest and best use of time at all times. To the second. Here's what it's worth. Here's what I'm doing. Here's why it makes a big difference in that piece. Right? Very, very important. Second piece here. Must be habitual. What does that mean? Must be a habit. Why? You're not going to have any momentum, ever. A lot of times the reason people can't build momentum because they can't build a habit to lean on that. Because here's the thing. No one's ever motivated the same way at the red line over and over naturally. You have to be able to lean on your prompts here, which is your schedule. But the more I can prioritize this and use this and make sure I have this habitual, the more effective it becomes. Just like me in the gym this morning. But you go through, you follow the habit, and all of a sudden, guess what you do? You will yourself into power. I'll say it again, you will yourself into power by using the habit that you have to help make sure you stick with that. And I want you guys to take away from today, if you're kind of beginning this, is habit stuff is okay. The part of you that can't do the same over and over is your undisciplined mind, and you have to build discipline of your mind to make sure that you can be able to be successful in what you do in life. In anything. He's the Navy SEAL guy. I read his book. It's not Way the SEAL, but it's one of those he talks about monkey brain. You have to have that power of habit here, which makes a big difference. Super important. Third piece here. Now don't deviate. There's only one reason I'll deviate from this. What do you think that is? Has a higher priority. So if I have something blocked out to make some calls from 3 to 4 o'clock, but Rich has an appointment at 3 o'clock, what am I going to do? Take the appointment. Why? It's higher priority. I'm making the dials to try to get the appointment, so all of a sudden that's my higher priority. Does that make sense, you guys? So I can't overanalyze that piece. How do I know if I deviate? It's got to be a higher priority, meaning that it gets me paid more and it's much more valuable. What a lot of people do, though, I don't want to give you guys a way to let yourself off the hook. I don't deviate unless it's very, 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 very important. Now, what's it easy to do? Let myself off the hook here because why?
Because you tell yourself that it's more important.
I create a story to myself that justifies me letting myself off. And so I got to make sure that I do not let myself off the hook. You have to understand the psychology of what you're doing and make sure I do what, Keith? I got to make sure I protect it and I stick with it no matter what. You guys with me on this? I want you to do one thing, go back and analyze how you've been operating this, please. What have I been doing here? How much is my calendar habitual? You guys notice how a professional golfer, you ever see a golfer warm up? Same exact way over and over. Why? Because they're built same with baseball, same way. Basketball, same way. Football, same way. Why? Because you're building that habit in your subconscious that drives you through to make sure you can make the moves the right way at the right time. Very, very, very important. Third piece here of this is I must actually execute. It can be really pretty, but if I don't actually do it, it doesn't matter. And so, super important for me to do in that scenario. So, for me to do that, first piece of that is I must have a disciplined mind. What else? That's true.
You ever hear that little man on your shoulder telling
Yes.
you to do something?
The word is, I resist the urge. I resist the urge. Natural urge, you go scroll Facebook for a while. The mind naturally wants to sedate. Why? Because increased focus, a lot of times it burns a lot of energy mentally. Literally, it physically burns energy. Right? Calories in what you have. And so your mind wants to sedate so it doesn't worry about that stuff, right? Go on cruise control. But ultimately, I got to do what? Resist the urge. Why? Because it all comes down to how people utilize time. Okay? Super, super important in that piece. Right? Second one here. I must hold myself accountable. What does that mean? Why is that in there? It's a hard piece at the end. Yes, back to the freedom piece. The freedom piece here, when no one's watching me, except myself, right? When no one's really going to notice. And what I found is if I just make sure I'm here on any second that's not, I tend to fill that gap with something that needs to get done. But I have to do what? Build myself around that so I can make sure that I can be accountable. Third piece here, which is part of that, is I must be all in. Must be all in. All into what? My calendar, AK committed to it. This stuff is the most important, second most important, third most important. But it's very easy to let yourself off the hook at this point. Even in my time, doing this for 18 plus years. Right? I've had on calendars and stuff. If you look at, kind of the post timeshare part or even last part of timeshare, understanding calendars, when I was doing my internet business thing. The reality is you had to understand calendars and stick to that. But even to this day, it's very hard here. It's a muscle that you build using what? The first stuff we talked about on the first page here. You guys with me on this? Yep. A lot of times people won't commit to the calendar because why? They don't want to be held accountable to themselves. If I don't put it in the calendar, guess what? But if it's in there, then I'm going to beat myself up for not actually doing it. Yep. Why is that? Because we're human. And so I got to make sure I do what? Get very clear on my calendar and make sure I have a commitment to stick to it. This is what pushes you through the times that you don't feel good. This is what gets you to that point where you feel very good at the end in terms of the results you have, the deals you have, and all the peace that you have. Are you guys with me on this? I think it's super, super important to understand that piece of it because it's one of those things that we all face with every day. But I want you to start understanding, how do I become a student of what? My behavior. My behavior. How do I operate? I think that's something that's very important here. I want you to become, I told you a while back, the most valuable thing I can do as a leader is to teach you how to think. And we're getting to level 202 and 303 here is that I want you to start thinking and understanding about your behavior. Why do I do the things that I do? Both good and bad. And start asking yourself and start inquiring on what are my habits behind that and start understanding how I do certain things in a certain way. Are you guys with me on this? Super important in that piece. All right, and then one more thing I want to teach you that's super easy, but I think it's important for us to go back on. It's something that we studied the past little bit, but it has to do with value. This is more of the sexy stuff, right? This is what? This is tactical. But the sexy doesn't matter if I can't do what? Execute on a high level. High level. And it all comes down to obsession with time. I say I love planes, right? And jets. And people, I can't figure out this guy, Myrtle Beach has a Gulfstream jet. I'm like, how does a guy in Myrtle Beach get a Gulfstream? Right? G650. It's amazing. They just flew to Iceland this week, and they flew back to Teterboro last night. How do you get that obsessive with it? How important your time is and how valuable your time is that you can get to that place and how you move up to who you are and what you do. Want a nicer car? Guess what you got to do? Obsessed with time to get much better and more efficient in my time for that day. Nicer house? The same exact thing. You've got to get much more efficient in how you utilize your time. How much is wasted? Right? Start measuring that. Start being obsessed with it and start defending against that. This here is what? This is your prompt. This is your tool that's going to help make sure that you can prompt yourself and trigger yourself into what? Production. That make sense, you guys, in that piece? Very important of that aspect.